Now, continuing on with where we left off with this photo of Marion from You Yell, You Kick, let's go ahead and dig a little bit deeper into levels. Now, sometimes for whatever reason, the histogram kind of freaks out on you and you get this box. So I'm actually kind of glad this worked out this way. If that ever happens to you, you just basically need to refresh the cache. So just unclick the effects icon for levels and bring it back and it will refresh. And so here you see the before and after. This is the original photo before levels, and this is what we did in the last movie with levels. In this case, I'm actually going to click the reset button to reset levels back to its default. Note that levels in its default state is just an info-only plugin. It's not really doing anything until we actually adjust stuff. So now that we've reset it, before and after look exactly the same. Now I want to direct your attention to the top of the effect. Under the channel dropdown, we're looking at RGB. In other words, the composite color image. When we adjust the midtones, we're adjusting all of the midtones. But what you can do is go to this channel dropdown and adjust channels individually. So if we go to the red channel, we can tweak the red channel. As we drag the midtone slider for the red channel to the right, we're basically removing red, which adds the opposite color, which is cyan. Now I can do the same thing with the green channel or with the blue channel. And again here, it pays to know a little bit about color theory. Let's say, for example, that the opposite of blue is yellow. I want to add a little bit more yellow to this in addition to the cyan that we added. So I'm going to subtract some of the blue. So we can keep going, have this be a very yellow image or just a slight yellow tint. That's a little bit too much, but you get the idea that we have some room to play with color here using these different color channels. I should also point out that you can not only edit color channels individually, but also the alpha channel. If you have a piece of footage with feathered edges, or maybe it's keyed and the edges are too soft, they're faded maybe, you could play with these triangles underneath the alpha channel here to adjust that. You could also fade opacity by dragging this to the left, which fades the image. We'll talk a little bit more about what this lower bar does in just a moment. For now, I'm actually going to select the levels effect on this image and delete it, getting back to the original state of the image. Now, one of the great advantages to being able to adjust the levels of each channel individually is that it aids us when we're compositing. In other words, we're combining two images that don't really belong together. So what I've done is I've imported a photo of me from the big After Effects project here. And this certainly doesn't belong for a lot of reasons, but one of the biggest reasons visually that it doesn't belong is that the colors are way off. This is obviously shot in two very different lighting conditions. In real life, Marion's skin is probably darker than mine because Casper the Ghost's skin is darker than mine, so I'm guessing Marion's is as well. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a trick to use levels on my layer so that I blend in more fully with Marion. Here's how this works. I'm going to apply levels to me here. And what we're going to do is we're going to come down to the bottom of the composition panel and look at just the red channel for all images, for the entire composition. And then what we're going to do is go back to the levels effect in the effect controls panel, change the channel dropdown to red. And then what I want to do is I want to fiddle with the red channel levels so that my brightness looks like her brightness on this channel and that my shadows and midtones look like her shadows and midtones. And we're going to do this for each channel separately. And by the time you're done, you will have a pretty good composite. In this case, I could see that her highlights are a lot more bright than mine. So I need to drag the right side of this upper histogram here, drag that to the left to make this a little bit brighter overall. Now I also noticed that her black jacket and my black shirt should probably look about the same. Right now, mine's much darker. So we could play with the midtones if we like until we get that a little bit brighter, dragging this midtone triangle to the left a little bit more. And we could also come down here to this lower bar. This lower bar controls the output values. And this actually works a little bit more intuitively than does the upper three triangles. Basically, this right-hand side represents the highlights again, but it's the output highlights. So if we want to take all white values and make them darker, they're too bright for whatever reason, we could just drag this down. And you can see that it's just lowering the value of all the bright values. Likewise, if we restore that and then drag the shadow slider in from the left to the right, then we're lightening all shadows. So that's one way we can make both of their shadows match. Now, it might be seeming like I'm kind of contradicting myself here because I've said before throughout this chapter, I'll probably say it a few times more, that we shouldn't be brightening the shadows or darkening the highlights. And normally that is true. But you see, in this case, we're not trying to go for a good quality result. We're trying to match two layers. Once we've composited them, then we can color correct and restore the shadows of both of them. But priority one at this point is just to get them looking the same. Now we probably could darken this a little bit more, and that looks pretty good there. And the next step is to come back down to the composition panel and change the channel that we're viewing to green. Now you can see this little highlight at the bottom and the top of the composition panel changes to green instead of red, let you know that we're looking at only the green channel. And we're going to do the same thing, change the channel drop down to green and adjust the highlight values and the shadow values so that they are similar between the two images. Finally, let's go to the blue channel. Notice that I'm not taking time to get this exactly perfect, but we'll just get in the ballpark and see how this goes. Bring up the highlights. And in this case, her jacket's very, very bright. A lot of brightness in the blue channel. So what I'm going to do is bring this up quite a bit here. Maybe not brighten this quite so much. That looks about right. So again, I'm looking at our faces because that's really where the highlights are. I'd be overdoing it just a little bit, but good enough. Now, finally, let's go down to the composition panel, the bottom here. Change this to RGB. That's the composite view, seeing all channels. And we can see the final result here. Now, we're seeing a little bit of a blue-green tint in the black of my shirt that we don't see in Marian's jacket. But overall, this looks much better. If we take off the visibility of the levels effect by clicking this effects icon next to levels, we can see the before and after. So even though both images are in need of a color correction, they now match one another. Now if we go to the finished composition, we can see one that I put a little bit more time and effort into, and the color cast has gone out of the black, and we're getting a little closer there. Skin tones are basically in the ballpark there, and also too you can see my pasty whiteness a little bit better. Her skin looks like it has a little bit more color to it, which is I'm sure the way it would be in real life. So we're getting pretty close. In the next movie, we're going to demystify another luminance adjusting powerhouse, the curves effect.